As I was sitting there listening to the speeches, I looked around this wonderful room, and I know we'll have a chance to see some of the other rooms in this state-of-the-art Boys and Girls Club, number 2000 Boys and Girls Club. I thought to myself, I see all that steel, I see all that cinder block work and electrical work and air conditioning work, and it takes about this much stuff to make a jail. It's about what it would take. And that's what we've been doing too much of in recent years. We've been using this kind of material and treasure to build jails, to put our children in eventually. No other civilized nation in the world has as many people in jail as we have in jail. So we need more mentors. We need more places like this, where the community comes together and says to the young people of the community, and especially in this neighborhood here, we care about you. Because you see, what these young people are seeing, not just a nice place to play basketball or in the computer room to run a software program. They don't see steel and cinder blocks alone. What they see are people who care about them. What they see are people who love them. What they see are people who have expectations of them and about them and will not let them fail. We do not have anything more important to do than to protect youngsters like this and put them on the road to success. The choice is very simple. We either build our children or we build more jails. It's time to stop building jails and get back to what we know how to do as Americans, and that's to build our children.
Welcome to the Gilchrist experience. I love this opening piece that is played. Imagine this is a general, Colin Powell, dedicating himself to what we should be doing with the Boys and Girls Club of Harlem. As you know, I'm on the board of directors of Boys and Girls Club Harlem. Boys and Girls Club of Harlem. And what we have is we have a new building going up next couple of years at PS 186, an old building. We're all right? A building on 145th Street between Broadway and Amsterdam. Boys and Girls Club of Harlem. Welcome to the show, the Gilchrist Experience. My guest today, or co-host, Graham Weatherspoon. And we're back again here. And our subject matter today was to start with the Boys and Girls Club. And what we should be doing with our kids. What sort of direction we should be giving them, and any comments on the Boys and Girls Club of Harlem?
Well, it served. We didn't have a Boys and Girls Club where I grew up in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. We didn't have one. But even more so today, organizations like that are truly necessary. More necessary now than I think they were earlier on, right, because of the breakdown of families,
right?
The breakdown of the Board of Education system in New York. Children are not being raised. Too many children are attempting to raise themselves, and as a result, that doesn't work. Right. Parents have been failing to parent. It's easy to bring a child into the world. Mm-hmm. It's no big deal to get a girl pregnant. It's no big deal to have a baby. That's a normal biological function of life, just like inhaling and exhaling. Right. The task is raising the child. And that is what has, to a sizable proportion, ceased. People are making babies, but they're not making families. They're investing in their own needs and wants and not investing in the children. You know, I see young mothers walking the street, cursing at their children.
Yeah. There you go.
And cursing at their sons.
Yeah.
So that young boy is going to have no respect or want to show any respect to any woman when he gets older.
That's right.
Young ladies, unfortunately, think that by having a baby for a guy, it's going to make a relationship, and that's ridiculous. That doesn't work. It never did work. And then I see a lot of young folks, they're so busy talking on the phone They don't have two hands to push a stroller and hold on to another child's hand when they're crossing the street. So our priorities are very much out of whack. I see children trying to talk to their parents, and mommy's on the phone walking down the street. Your child should be the center of your life.
Yeah.
The first 7 years of a child's life are most critical, and that pretty much will determine the way in which they will go. And if they don't have that nurturing in those first 7 or 8 years, the child's going to be lost. And trying to retrieve them when they're 13, 14, and 15 makes it almost impossible to do.
Well, this is a big problem in our society, how we raise our kids. But you see, we're making an effort here to promote, you know, child care and the way to come up as a, you know, the way, what you should be knowledgeable about is what's happening in our society and how to take care of yourself. We went over Eric Gardner last week, and we'd like to, since there was such a demand for the show last week, you know, we went over what had happened, and we got a lot of comments from the audience, so we'd like to do that again this week. But we'll start by just introducing the chokehold, and we'll just go through the first 3 minutes, and we'll get the call number up there, and we have a lawyer on the case calling in a few more minutes. Well, let's run the first piece of this. Eric Gardner, you're all eyewitnesses, and learn to use your cell phone, because you're the eyewitness on the scene. Run that piece, and we'll come right back at you.
Business. The fight break out, stop. Yes. Don't say you can put it up on me.
That's all right.
The people that's fighting just don't walk away. Are you serious? I didn't do nothing. Where did I go?
Then before
What
that.
am I ID on me? Take you left for what? I didn't sell anything. I did nothing. We sitting here the whole time, minding our business. What are you talking about? Who else you do what? Who else I sell cigarette to? To whom?
Not that rich. There's another guy.
Easy way or hard way for what? Every time you see me, you want to mess with me. I'm tired of it. It's time today.
This guy right here is forcibly trying to lock somebody up for breaking up a fight.
Everybody standing here, they told you I didn't do nothing. I did not sell nothing. Because every time you see me, you want to harass me, you want to stop me, you want to sell a cigarette. I'm minding my business, officer. I'm minding my business. Please just leave me alone. I told you the last time. Please just leave me alone. Please, don't touch me. Don't touch me.
Hold on.
Don't touch me, please.
Came over.
Not touch me.
Put your hand behind your back.
I can't breathe. 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 I can't breathe.
Once again, police beating up on people.
Back
Look
up.
right here.
Back up and get on that steps.
Okay.
Back up.
All he did was break up a fight. And this what happens for breaking up a fight. This crazy.
Everybody back up. Back up.
He can't breathe. Look, now I mean, they gave this man a seizure.
Yo, move out the way. Yo.
It's my brother. We live here.
Back up this way. Everybody now back up. It's now going to become a crisis. Back it up. Back it up. Come
I'm
on.
going to my house.
No. This way. Let's go.
Can't go in my
Either
house?
house or that way.
All right, I go
pick
that
a,
way.
Pick a choice.
I'm getting my
Let's
bike.
Go. You had your chance to get your bike, sir. Staying over there. Right now we have seen.
Palantino, the guy in the green T-shirt.
Yeah.
He was there from the very beginning. I hadn't noticed this. The more you watch this, the more you see. because he was standing there calmly talking to the guy in the beginning. You saw the cop in the beginning had the DD on the back of his T-shirt, and Palatano was standing on the other side.
Pantaleo, I think.
Pantaleo?
Pantaleo, something like that, Pantaleo.
Anybody can call in, give us your name, give us his name. But this officer, as we find out, had, I understand that Eric Gardner had a case against him, which was dismissed. And as a result, I think the officer actually knew. Is this Rubenstein? All right. Now we have Rubenstein, which is the lawyer on this case. He's on the phone. We couldn't Skype him in, but yeah, you on the phone?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm here.
All right.
This is Sanford Rubenstein, the attorney for Eric Garner.
All right.
His
Now,
family.
well, we just ran a little piece where the opening was where they initially choked him. Now, we just mentioned that he had a case, Eric Gardner had a case against this officer, which is Palatino. The officer's name?
I'm having trouble hearing you.
The officer's name that actually did the choking.
Well, I think what's important is, what are we going to do about it? You just saw the video.
Right.
Now the question is, what is the community going to do? On August 23rd, Saturday,
Right.
there will be a march across the Verrazano Bridge, starting at the base of the bridge in Brooklyn to Staten Island. You know, in 1997, when I represented Abner Louima, we marched across the Brooklyn Bridge for justice for Abner Louima. 30 years was the term of jail given to Justin Volpe in that case. In 2006, we marched down Fifth Avenue shopping for justice for Nicole Bell, the mother of Sean Bell's 2 children, and while the detectives were indicted, they were found not guilty by a judge on trial. However, one was fired from the police force and others either resigned or retired. In 2014, I am asking the community to march once again, this time across the Verrazano Bridge, to march for justice for Eric Garner and to demonstrate to our city elected officials that the policy of broken windows is a broken policy. And it's interesting because that date, August 23rd, 2014, is the 25th anniversary of the killing of Yusef Hawkins in Bensonhurst. So from Brooklyn to Staten Island, across the Verrazano Bridge, as Reverend Sharpton said, 25 years later, Eric Garner, dead as a result of a chokehold. We should be going forward. We're not going to let this city go backward ever again. I invite all of your viewers and listeners to march with Reverend Sharpton and the National Action Network on Saturday, August 23rd, gathering at the base of the Verrazano Bridge at 1 o'clock for justice for Eric Garner.
Beautiful.
Mr. Rubenstein, I would assume that as a...
I'm having trouble hearing you.
All right. I would assume that a notice of claim has been filed by the family.
At this point in time, a notice of claim has not been filed because what this family wants is justice in the criminal side. This family ultimately will pursue whatever remedies they have civilly, but that's not what they're interested in. They want justice, and justice means that any criminal act that took place by the police officer who choked them and any other police officers on the scene, as well as the emergency medical technicians, be prosecuted by the appropriate entity of prosecutors with regard to the issue of criminality.
Well, since this officer actually knew Eric Gardner, now do you see anything as far as that's concerned? I mean, he knew they had an instance where Eric had a case against him which was dismissed, I understand.
Look, the family wants all of the facts with regard to this killing of Eric Garner to be investigated by the appropriate investigative agency. It's in the hands now of the Staten Island District Attorney, and the family wants a federal probe. The family wants this to be prosecuted by the federal authorities. If you remember back to 1997, in the case of Abner Louima, the terrible sodomization, the federal government took over the prosecution from Mr. Hines, at that time the Brooklyn district attorney, and prosecuted this case fully. And as a result, there were convictions, guilty pleas. That's what the family wants, for the federal government to come in and prosecute this case.
Has the U.S. Department of Justice been in touch with your office or the family subsequent to the request for the intervention of the federal government?
There was a meeting with federal authorities, and the family advised the prosecutors of what they want. According to press reports, the federal government is, in fact, monitoring the situation. But the family wants the federal government to come in and prosecute this case, investigate, and then prosecute, if that's appropriate.
In light of what has just happened in Newark, New Jersey, where the FBI is now monitoring the Newark, New Jersey Police Department, do you see anything like that in the future for the New York City Police Department in light of all the deaths that we've had over the last 20, 30 years?
You know, after the Louima case, or during the pendency of the Louima case, the matter of federal intervention, which would mean a federal judge would hear a pattern of practice of brutality issue raised, but it has to be raised by the U.S. Attorney's Office. It can only be raised by a U.S. Attorney's Office. And then if a judge found that there was a pattern of practice of brutality, a monitor would be appointed by the judge, or a consent decree could be entered into by the municipality.
Reverend Sharpton mentioned a conflict of interest at the Sunday press conference.
Well, there's a serious issue here with regard to conflict of interest, and that's raised by the fact that Mr. Order, who was the audiographer who took the very famous now video of Pictures of the Truth, I call it.
Right.
What happened?
Exactly.
He was arrested recently on a gun charge.
Right.
And his wife recently was arrested on an assault charge.
His wife?
Those charges are pending now in the Staten Island District Attorney's Office, and the question has to be raised, does that raise a conflict for the Staten Island prosecutor, the district attorney, who now has to prosecute Order, his wife, when he also is investigating the issue of the death of
Eric Garner.
And has to make a determination with regard to putting that before a grand jury.
What's the status of the officer right now? Is he in jail?
I believe he's simply been relieved of his gun and badge, is still getting his pay, and is on some kind of death.
They haven't arrested him yet?
That is correct.
Wow.
If the DA were to indict him, they would then get an indictment arrest, and he'd surrender himself at that time.
Well, the question has to be raised. If it were you or me,
well, yeah, we'd have been locked up.
And there was a video, and
we'd
there was
been
an
locked
autopsy,
up.
an autopsy,
Right.
in which the finding was homicide.
Absolutely.
Would we still be walking the streets?
I mean,
interesting comparison.
Right.
But why is that so? Why is he still walking the streets?
You'd have to ask the district attorney that.
Well, that's amazing.
Now, does 18080 come into play here with the time frame? I know he said he was waiting for the complete medical examiner's report.
Right.
Evidently, the initial report was that Eric Garner was choked, but he's waiting for the complete medical report. So has that come forth as yet?
Not to my knowledge. The medical examiner, an independent agency who has always been straight shooters in terms of, that's not a good term, who have always been upfront with their findings and is an impartial agency of the city, has made a determination of homicide, but their final report has not been issued yet.
What about the newly installed, I can't remember the name of it, to oversee the police department? They assigned, not an IG, they assigned, in conjunction with the CCRB, they just... A monitor.
That was as a result of the federal lawsuit on stop and frisk.
Ah, okay.
As well as, I believe, legislation that was introduced and passed in the city council by Jumaane Williams, who's been a leader in this issue, City Councilman Jumaane Williams.
What do we say to all the doubting Thomases that will, tell us that nothing's going to happen, it'll be the same as usual, this officer is going to get off like everybody else? I understand we have the example of Lupe Abulina getting conviction there. He's still spending 25 years in prison.
30 years.
30 years.
30 years in prison.
In the Louis case,
Volpe.
Justin Volpe was sentenced to 30 years. He's still in jail. That was a case in which the federal government prosecuted. Now, we've had other cases here in New York City. The case of Ferdinand
Sean Bell,
Zhu, in which a judge found the police officer guilty, yet an appeals court reversed it. We have the case of Usman Zongo, in which a police officer was found guilty with regard to manslaughter and only got probation. So certainly, the first step here, the family wants, is for the federal government to come in and investigate, put the facts before a grand jury, and if there's an indictment, prosecute.
what do you think is the best we can do or expect from this?
Well, I think that it would be appropriate for the federal government to come in, and this case prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office. Excuse me, my other phone is ringing. Hold on one second.
Be patient if you're on the phone waiting. We're getting important information here, which we all need to hear. I know a lot of people.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm back.
Yeah, we're worrying about how fair this, all the other officers that escape prosecution.
Well,
That's what people are thinking about.
We have a system of justice that exists in this country, a state system and a federal system.
Right.
In the state system, a defendant can waive a jury, have a non-jury trial.
Right.
In the federal system, a defendant cannot waive a jury
Right,
unless
right,
the
right,
prosecution
right,
agrees.
right.
So the family clearly wants the federal government to come in and prosecute this under the statutes that exist with regard to violations of civil rights. In that, the issue is intent. If you go back to the case of Sean Bell, in which I represented Nicole Bell, the federal government did not intervene because there was, in their view, a problem with regard to the issue of intent. Reverend Sharpton has said certainly 11 times, I can't breathe, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. At which point does it become intent? So I think that in this case, it's a different fact pattern than the Sean Bell case, and the family wants the federal government to come in and prosecute.
Well, me as a layman, looking at the video, knowing that he had a case against Eric Gardner once before, had been known to harass Eric Gardner before, and he stood there and patiently waited till he got a backup, then jumped on the guy and choked him to death.
Look, what this family wants is for all of the facts to be investigated by the U.S. Attorney's Office, and all of the facts that the U.S. Attorney's Office deems it appropriate put before a federal grand jury, and the issue of criminality be resolved there, and if an indictment comes forward, the federal government to prosecute this case. That's what the family wants.
Well, I'm just saying that as a layman looking at it, this is premeditated murder.
Well, premeditation is a very complex thing in the court of law, but I believe the federal prosecutor should step in, looking at the patterns of the DAs in New York City.
Well, that's another issue. Pattern and practice of brutality is a lawsuit which can only be brought by the federal government, and it has been brought by this Justice Department in many municipalities. But it would be a separate lawsuit in the federal courts in which they would ask a federal judge to appoint a federal monitor to oversee the NYPD.
Now, I remember during the Sean Bell trial, I sat there and I grabbed one of the ADAs and took her outside, and there was an expert, allegedly an expert witness on the stand discussing ballistics. And he was asked questions that were never refuted by D.A. Brown's people, and I was irate. And I gave her a list of questions to give him on ballistics. And I told Valerie Bell and Bud Bell, I said, this case is going down the tubes because the DA is not doing his job.
One of the issues that always comes up is should the local prosecutors in the municipalities be charged with the responsibility of prosecuting police officers? After all, when you look at the fact that these district attorney's offices need the detectives, need the police officers to make their criminal cases, and that's the way it should be.
Right.
And we need the police officers to testify in those cases. Is there a better system? Should this be given to the Attorney General? Should this be given to an independent prosecutor's office, cases of police brutality? Certainly there are many who feel that would give the public much more confidence when these cases are prosecuted.
Absolutely. I used to say that I was the chef and the DA was the waiter, because as I did the investigation, I compiled all the information.
Right.
And once I knew I had a solid case, I then took it to the district attorney's office. But unfortunately, we've seen too many cases where we know that the trials should have gone a different way. And this is another problem with the grand jury system, and Mr. Rubenstein might want to comment on this. In the grand jury process, the DA only presents what he or she chooses to present. It is a quietly closed encounter, and we don't know what is presented. We just recently saw the Ramarley Graham case go down the tubes with D.A. Johnson in the Bronx, and that was a case where the police violated constitutional law, broke into a house, went into that apartment and shot that young fella in the chest. I went to examine the body, and the notion was that he was running from the police, but the video that NYPD presented to the general public was not a video of Ramarley Graham. It was a video of somebody else going down the street.
I'm going to make one more comment, then I'm afraid I'm running out of time.
Okay.
And my comment is this: perhaps the concept of cameras on police officers so that we can have always a photo of what's happening would be a manner in which we can always have pictures of the truth. In this case of the death, the wrongful death of Eric Garner, we have pictures of the truth. And perhaps, I got to go now, but that's something that might be helpful. Thank you for having me.
Right,
thank you. I appreciate it. See you Saturday. Well, you know what we're going to do? We'll start talking, and we're going to run the rest of this video, and meanwhile, you can call in and ask questions, and we'll just talk about the video and how we can see that this is all. The second pass? Well, just run the video also, all right? All right. Carla, you on the line?
Recording everything. Let's go. Back up. Y'all coming. Come on. Nice.
You don't have to do it yourself.
Man, can you back up, please? We're trying to give him some air. We're going to get an ambulance, all right? Yeah, back up. Y'all got him on the floor. Y'all got him on the floor. Y'all talking about back up. You hear this? Now they're trying to get him an ambulance. After they harassed him, slammed him down, NYPD. You understand? This is going right here. It's going viral right here. NYPD harassing people for no reason. He didn't do anything at all. Going viral. Now they want to step back. They want to try to get him an ambulance. After they beat him up, brought him to the ground. Nice try. So going viral. Harassment. Prejudice cops on Staten Island. This is what they do.
That's right. They could deal with us and have no car notes until the new year. At Brooks Cars, you breathe, you drive. Zero down is always available. No worries, no regrets with a limited lifetime powertrain warranty on any purchase. Check out our inventory at BronxCars.com. That's BronxCars.com.
Earn a degree that can mean more money, power, and respect. Ready? Saturday, July 19th at Metropolitan College's open house. Call 1-800-33-THINK or visit mcny.edu. That's mcny.edu.
Yes, caller.
Yes, my brothers. How you doing? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, as a retired New York City police officer myself, I came on the job in '85, and through my training as an African American officer, you know, the chokehold was definitely illegal. And as I watched them interact with the brother, I have yet to hear that they were placing him under arrest at any point. And they have this sense, the Caucasian officers will have this sense of that they need to immediately attack brothers in the street. And throughout my whole career, it has always been a battle with me dealing with some of the Caucasian officers. So all of this smoke and mirrors about they're going to retrain the police department, they need a whole internal mental cleaning and the superiority complex that they have in dealing with African American men. So I say to you and the brother there that I don't believe anything new will come out of this. And in order to help the system work efficiently, we definitely need an external prosecution of cops that abuse the citizenship outside of the DA's office, because there's still that marriage between the officers and the DA's office. So we need an external body that deals with any type of abuse cases like this in the future. I don't believe that cops need cameras. I don't believe that they need to do anything else but have an outside external law enforcement agency prosecute cops that overstep their boundaries.
So everything's quite obvious to you since you were a cop on the scene, such as, you know, Graham feels the same way, I'm sure, that, Sanford Rubenstein said that we need the federal government to step in on this case.
Right, and I feel that's what we need, because, again, you don't want to criminalize the whole police department.
Right.
Just like a couple of bad apples, you know, make the whole bunch of bad. But you need to weed out those officers that tend to think that it's okay to immediately attack African American men on the street. I yet to see, maybe we don't have the audio aspect of it, where they actually said you're under arrest.
Right.
It was just an immediate grab and take to the ground.
If you're looking at your screen, you can see the officer right in the background here, in the green outfit. And I believe right here he waves at the camera. So they seem to think this is amusing.
Right, it's a joke when it comes to African American men.
Yeah.
I've seen no first aid being given to the brother on the ground. That's immediately what we suppose we're trained to do that.
Right.
If you take the brother, you take anybody down, and they say they have difficulty breathing, you immediately provide first aid.
Right.
So if you were on the scene, you would have done what?
The first thing I would have did is the brother said he was breathing, to make sure nobody's choking him, so make sure his airway is clear. Second thing, if he's not moving, it's a call EMS and immediately start a respiratory process. Either we yell out, see if somebody has a defibrillator, and we get this brother breathing.
Don't they carry those?
No.
They don't?
No, they don't, but I'm quite sure they're right on the boulevard. Every store on the block generally now required to have defibrillators, and they could have got one to the scene with not that much difficulty.
Well, you saw this is in time. This has all happened in a matter of 5-10 minutes.
Right.
So this is real time as we watch the video.
Right.
So he was dead. He looks dead right here. I don't know why they say he was breathing. Actually, on the videotape, they say he was breathing.
Yeah,
but I don't believe he was breathing. I think that's a lie too.
I believe I will see with that. You know, because they are just trying to cover up. If you didn't notice the slow reaction, nobody really did anything. And my 20 years experience on the job, you would scare people.
See, watch the officer. I think he waves here. Yeah, he's waving.
You know.
Yeah.
One of the things is that a police officer is responsible for the safety of the prisoner once you put your cuffs on them.
Right.
And if anything happens to that prisoner, you're liable for that.
Exactly.
And I hit a cop on 34th Street who struck my prisoner years ago. And a lieutenant saw the cop hit my prisoner, and he saw me punch the cop. And I said, if you ever think about touching a prisoner, you're going to get yourself killed. All right? That man is my responsibility. He's got my handcuffs on him, which are registered to my name. The serial number on those cuffs are linked to my name from Equipment and Supply. So they didn't. And this is a pattern. They do not render first aid to someone that they've injured. And you're required to do that. And there is a law in the state of New York. Medical personnel are to report any abuse that they see on a prisoner brought into a medical facility. And the medical personnel don't report it. So they're all complicitous in covering up for each other. That young lady that came there and said, oh, we're here to help you and all that nonsense. If he was alive, why didn't she administer CPR? Why didn't she go to the ambulance and get a trach to open up his airway? Why was there no attempt by any of those people standing around there to perform CPR or get air into his lungs? Because he was already deceased.
You mean, could they have revived him?
For them, they possibly could have in the first
They could have saved his life.
First 2 minutes or so. I've done CPR on
they could have saved his life.
come in, and we got the guy going back.
So you're saying they let him lay there and die?
They let him lay there. All right? The cops are liable for that. EMS is liable for it. If you're saying that he was declared dead an hour later, then why weren't you doing something for him when you arrived on the scene?
Because they knew he was dead. He didn't look like he was breathing.
His torso, as big as he is, you don't see his chest cavity. You don't see his torso moving at all.
Right.
There's no movement there.
I mean, I've looked at that very carefully, and I don't see. I think the man was dead right there.
And now the PBA is trying to attack the medical examiner. One thing.
Didn't the medical examiner come out with something different?
No. The medical examiner said he died as a result of choking. Now.
No, that's the latest one.
The medical examiner, yeah. What I'm going
I thought in the beginning somebody said he died of a heart attack.
No, that was nonsense they threw out there.
All right.
I've been at the medical examiner's office when I had a dead body there, and I had to explain to the medical examiner how this person got in this condition.
All right, just give us the next caller then.
30 seconds. And if a person committed suicide, jumped in front of a train, I had to explain some of the injuries on the body. All right? I had a guy who was missing half of his face.
Right.
And I had to explain, he says, well, what happened to his face?
So
I said, well, when he jumped in front of the train dragged him down along the cover board over the third rail, and the bolts on the third rail took chunks of his face out. Because I had to go back and retrieve those pieces of his face.
All right.
You know?
So come on, who's calling?
Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, there's a bunch of things I'd like to say. So, I mean, first thing is, everybody that was on the scene when he died should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
That's what we're just saying.
Not just the person who everyone's saying did a chokehold.
Right.
So we got to be clear about that. The EMS people, DD, everybody that was there should be, because they all had an opportunity to prevent that from happening.
Right.
The other thing is, this bad apples, all cops are not bad. You got to weed out a few bad apples. First of all, if you're dealing with a system, with a set, an organization who is the so-called good people don't have a say in anything, then you will never weed out any bad apples, because they're all, it's the blue code of silence, which I hate to say that because that's like cliche. But you could never weed out a bad apple because they're all part of the organization. And when they maybe speak up, the so-called good officers, perhaps maybe something good get done. But the question I called to ask was, I want to ask the question, then say a few more things before I shut up. The coroner, was it the family's coroner or was it the police coroner? And probably before you answer that, I'd also like to say is that this situation is a very serious situation. There seems to be a double standard in this country, that there's laws that pertain, that the laws are for white people, and then there's laws for black people. Right. And so I wouldn't care if he choked on a piece of chewing gum. We're saying it's a chokehold from what I understand, when you suffocate, you can't talk. So if he's saying, I'm not clinical, I don't work for the hospital, but when you're choking, you can't talk. So we're saying that he was chokehold, but he was saying, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. I'm not being, going against everything. I also believe that we're going to have to get some white folks involved, because this thing is not a black and white thing. This thing is a civil rights thing.
Right.
It's a humanitarian thing. And we as black people, we have been extremely patient. You know, folks is telling us, calm down, and how we got to work together, and all this type of thing wouldn't happen if we wasn't together, and all these kind of things that people are saying. Black people have been so patient. We've been so patient. And so if we weren't patient, we'd be running amok. So the bottom line is, we just have to make sure everything is in perspective. Your program is really, its conversation is amazing. The brother that used to be a former cop, I can't see his name. When he spoke, everything that he said was so eloquent, because it hit on so many issues that we're going through in the black community. I mean, I watched the news last night for 30 minutes, and everything that was discussed, Mr. Gilchrist, was for 30 minutes. The shootings, the stabbings, the thievery, the robbery, the heinous murders were done by black children under 21. So, we're going to deal with this police thing, because we have to. It's our livelihood. But we also are going to have to deal with the atrocities that are happening that's happening in our communities. Our children look terrible. Our young people that are in prison, the families. It's like one sister said on Sister Talk, this other program that comes on Saturday, Sister Talk. She said when one thing happens to a black person, it happens to all of us. When one dies, a little piece of all of us die as black people. And so it's going to become, we know that the family will win a lawsuit. We know that Mr. Gardner's children will get a few $1 million, and then the next day, another black man will die. So it's not a question of winning the suit and getting money for the family. It's a question of getting this garbage to stop, is what the question is. Black men and women being dogged out and murdered and all this kind of thing, and everybody's just business as usual. We got to hit the streets, hand out flyers, go online, hit up your Congress people, your senators, your assemblymen, your whoever, any politician involved, letting them know how you feel. Go online, Google this information. It's not hard to do. It was hard for me at first, but once I got a hang of it, I did it. And this is what we have. Hit the streets with flyers, and the list goes on, because there's no such thing as a bad apple. They're all part of the bunch, and they're not saying, the good apples aren't saying anything.
Thank you.
So it's up to us to say something.
I appreciate your comments, and the one question you asked was
the
about
medical examiner.
The medical examiner.
The pathologist is the city's medical examiner. The pathologist's job is to determine the cause of death.
Right.
That's.
Well, he's independent.
He's independent.
Okay.
He's independent. He doesn't work for the police department.
Right.
And I'm sure that Mr. Garner's body was removed to Manhattan, to Bellevue, to the main office to do it there. And they know that, they said that he dies from compression. See, those cops, they talk about how big and fat he was. When you have a few cops on top of you, laying on you, and those guys are over 200 pounds apiece, you're not going to be able to inhale and exhale.
So he had 1,000 pounds.
He says, I can't breathe, right? Even after the cop took his hand from around his throat and he was laying on his head, you saw him pressing his head. The other cops are laying on his torso. You have to be able to expand your ribs in order to inhale and exhale. And if you're being pressed into the cement by the weight of these people, there's no way in the world you can even take a breath. So the chokehold is one. The compression of the torso, which is another thing the medical examiner said, he spoke of. So all of that is going to come into play.
Well, what she was saying, now how can you talk if you can't breathe?
You have to inhale and exhale in order to breathe. Air has to be passing through your windpipe.
Well, she's saying, how can you talk? How can you say, I can't breathe?
Well, he was having trouble breathing, and ultimately, he couldn't breathe at all.
Okay.
There was no capacity to breathe, and he stopped breathing because of the weight. See, if you're in a bear hug, the only way to survive a bear hug is to hold your breath. If you hold your breath, your ribs will not collapse. It's like a soda can, all right? You pop the soda can, you can crush the can. If you hold your breath and a person has you in a bear hug, you have a better chance to survive. If you let the air out of your lungs, your ribs will collapse.
Next caller, please. You have one. Next caller.
Hello, is that me?
It is you.
Hello there. Hello there. Very good discussion. You know, since they have stopped this stop and frisk, things seem to have gotten worse instead of better.
Worse for who?
Worse for the community.
Well, what are you saying?
Well, I'm just saying that the stop and frisk, that got a lot of attention, and then so supposedly the police have stopped stop and frisk. But now they're into chokeholds and all this other kind of stuff. So I think it's gotten a lot worse since the stop and frisk.
Were you saying we should go back to stop and frisk?
Oh, listen, I thought it was horrible. So,
well, I don't understand.
This is what I'm really calling to say.
Okay.
If you look closely at this tape before they even bring Mr. Gardner down, Mr. Gardner is the large man, and he's not a young man. They keep saying he was
43.
resistant. I say Mr. Gardner was stumbling and trying to catch his balance. As they were trying to pull him down, they didn't give him anything to hold on to. Nobody was holding Mr. Gardner at this point. He felt himself going into a free fall.
Right.
Backwards.
Well, the point is that when you're in a situation like that, now you know how crazy, I think we went over this last week. Now you know how crazy the situation is. You're a black man and you're as large as you are, as he was. He's 400 pounds.
360.
How much?
360.
360. All right, that's somewhere close to 4. Anyway, but the guy next to him in the green 99, Palatino, whatever his name was, still can't get his name right. But anyway, they felt intimidated. So they felt that they had to do something to this guy. The best thing for him to do in that situation, since you know these cops harass him all the time, they're just looking for an excuse to jump on him. Yes, sir, here are my hands, just turn yourself in. It doesn't pay to fight with these, don't touch me, don't touch me. That's all the excuse they needed. Don't touch you. They choke you to death. That's what this guy did. I mean, to take on that, Graham, I mean, you're an officer. Well, how would you have handled it?
There are, let me go back to, she mentioned chokehold.
Right.
There are 1,200 complaints on record with the Civilian Complaint Review Board of people having been choked over the last few years. There are only 10 substantiated cases with the Civilian Complaint Review Board with regard to the use of the chokehold. Right? 1,200 over the last few years. This is nothing new to police procedures, not lawful procedure, but it's nothing new. This is something that's been going on for a long time. The only thing is, in this case, Mr. Gardner wound up being a corpse. All right? But 1,200 people have filed complaints about having been choked by police officers. And the fact is that we want people, you cannot litigate a case on the sidewalk. That's what courts are for, that's what attorneys are for. And we got some sick-minded police officers out here. If only 1% of the police department is the problem, then that'll give you about 384 armed felons roaming the city of New York at any given time of the day or night. 1% of 34,000 people is 340. That's a major crime wave. And it is something we cannot afford, an organized crime wave in the city of New York. These people are hiding under a badge. I've sent 2 cops to prison during my tenure as a detective.
Yeah.
All right? And they needed to be in prison because they were perpetrating a fraud as a police officer, but they were criminals. So
we've got a lot of people on the line.
There has to be a cleanup. Go ahead. Next
All right,
call.
we've got a lot of people on the line here. All right. So next caller, please.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Son of MJQ here. How you guys doing?
How you doing, man?
All right. You know, unfortunately, this Garner situation has really trickled down and a very bad domino effect and a very bad precedent being set. The guy that filmed the video, he got arrested, and his wife was arrested yesterday for misdemeanor assault. If you ask me, that wasn't too bright on their part.
Yeah,
and
really.
I just think if this man had just given himself up, we wouldn't be hearing about any of these people.
Right.
Okay, that's number one. Number two, I saw an incident on New York 1 today where a police officer confronted a gentleman who was drinking an open container in Times Square. And somebody attempted to film what was going on, and the police officer slapped the phone out of the gentleman's hand and knocked it to the ground. So if Sanford Rubenstein said that if these police officers are equipped with uniform cameras, what's to stop a police officer from ripping that uniform camera off his body and just doing what he wants to do? That's what I want to ask. But I just want to say also that a bad precedent's being set where police officers are abusing our people and our people are not respecting the law. And that has to be addressed as well.
Cameras on a cop are not going to help you.
Why not?
Because it only gives one angle. It only gives one view. You cannot see what the cop is really doing because the camera is aimed at you. When this guy took the video of Garner, he had a full view of the police officer and of Garner. That's the view you need. You can't see what a cop is doing, or they're not going to be able to see what the cop is doing to a person with that camera up in the eyeglasses, all right? I can hit you below the view of that camera, and it's not going to be on camera. I did a thing. Go to wearechange.com. There was a video I did there on filming the police. You can see that on wearechange.com. Type my name in the search, and it'll come up.
Say again?
We Are Change. wearechange.com. Type my name in, and the video will come up there.
That's Graham Weatherspoon.
Just in the search box, put in Graham Weatherspoon. The video will come up on, do people have the right to film the police? I did that video a year and a half ago.
We have to bring it on the show. We'll play it as a role and show the people what we're trying to do here is show you how to avoid a lot of this stuff.
But see, what this brother did, he kept his distance. He stayed out of the way.
Yeah.
And
supposedly
he did the right
lived
thing.
right there.
He lives there. He stayed out of the way. He filmed everything. He caught it. That's what has to be captured. What all parties involved are doing has to be captured, not just the view of the police officer.
I think what Sandy Rubenstein was saying now, if the cops had video, they would have to account for what they're doing.
But you can't see what the cop is doing.
Well, maybe
because
the
cop is behind the camera.
Maybe the cop is being the eyewitness. The cop with the good cop. One of the good cops has a camera. Maybe the good cops have cameras.
People need to video. Keep shooting your
Next caller, please. How many people we got waiting? Next caller, please.
How you doing? Great hosting of the show, sir. Just wanted to let you know that. My question is more of a overall retrospective of what's going on. Lady was talking about the stop and frisk and how that thing ties into what we're doing. Our people are disproportionate as far as how the police treat us. The Caucasian race, black race, is just treated differently. You can see that. And with this stop and frisk thing and with this gentleman that just died, go down to, let's say, a white area. Would they have treated that person the same way? One of the things that could have happened in that case would have been solved very easy, and they had the opportunity to do it, is they could have just gave the man a little ticket. So here's a ticket, you started some cigarettes, keep it moving. But no, they wanted to make a show. Same thing with the stop and frisk. And the problem with the stop and frisk is, we know that there's drugs in the white neighborhood.
Right.
We know that they're doing probably the same things that's happening in the black neighborhood. Look at the thing they just did in Colorado. They just had, when they give marijuana is legal now, right? When you looked at, when they gave that first day that it was legal, who did you see on the line at going into these shops? It was all white people. Now, you're going to tell me they just started smoking marijuana that day? Or were they smoking marijuana before that, which was breaking the law, and why was nobody arresting them? But every day on TV, see a bunch of black people getting arrested for petty crime.
There is crime. You're right. There is crime all over New York. You can go to Borough Park, Brooklyn, where pedophilia is a major problem within the Jewish community. You can go down to Brighton Beach with the Russian community, with their involvement in drugs, narcotics, counterfeiting. You can go into Long Island City and into Greenpoint, where you will find the Polish people with their crimes. It's going on everywhere, and what this brother said is very true. The media is only showing what the black people are doing, but the crime is prevalent. It's throughout the entire city.
But we know that. I mean, everything he said is true, but what do we do about it? You stop. I mean,
you don't control media.
Well, the point is that we know that if you're black, you're going to get a bad deal. I mean, everything about this is just the black experience. So how do we prevent this kind of stuff?
It's all about thinking.
Don't worry about you being black.
You have to think ahead of these cops.
There's nothing inferior about being black. I mean, that's an obvious thing. If you're black, you know that you have an extra special gift. That's what you are. You're blessed.
If you're driving and there's a pothole, you have two options. Drive into that pothole and wreck your car, or avoid the pothole.
That's it.
Same thing in life. There are plenty of potholes in life. We have to start thinking about what we're doing. Life is about decisions, making the right decision at the right time. All right? Granted, what happened to Eric Gardner was criminal. But Eric Gardner would be alive today if he had complied and just said, all right, arrest me, officer, we'll settle this in court. It's not you can't prove anything on the street corner. You can't prove it on the street corner.
And if you're black and you know that there's racism exists in this world, these people are stupid. The racism is stupid. People don't like you because of your color. That's nonsense. When you start judging people by their color instead of the content of their character, you've lost out yourself. So don't be as ignorant as the rest of the people. You judge people by the way they treat each other. One more caller, please.
We need people also to take the exam for the police department. That's why I joined the police department.
We got a minute to go.
I was sick of what I was seeing and what was going on in my neighborhood, so I became the police officer. I had the right to tell a kid go home as opposed to arresting him. I had that right, and I exercised it. So we need more people to take the exam.
Yeah, there you go.
Take the exam, take the psychological, make sure you have your 60 credits, your college credits, and it's not about becoming a cop. You come in to move up in rank. It's not about being a cop for 20 years. That's a waste of time. Become a sergeant, a lieutenant, a captain. It's about studying, because the people who make the decisions control the people on the job. And if you're not in a position to control the people, we're not going to move forward.
My main concern is how we treat one another. I mean, if you know you're black, you're blessed. You're a blessed human being, as far as I'm concerned. It's nothing but ignorance. So take care of yourself and your own. And the God in me loves the God in you. And stay tuned to the Gilchrist Experience next week. We'll have more interesting things to talk about. But God bless you, and stay tuned.